everyone. Welcome to episode 10 of Fallen Angels, Nephilim, and UFOs. We're back.
So I'm Stephen Macchio.
And I'm Joseph Macchio.
And I think we left off in the last episode of reading some scriptures, biblical scriptures,
Yes.
regarding and defining the two sets of evolutions
Yes.
that are on the planet that we've been talking about.
Yes.
And I think the one that we're going to read again, this is from Matthew, a biblical scripture, a biblical reference, and it is very, very clear that they're talking about two separate kinds of individuals. So let's reread that again.
We're going to reread this
that.
because, we're going to read it. It is very important. Now, this is again Matthew 13, 38 to 40 and verse 43. Jesus says, of course, he's talking about the parable of the tares, which is the weeds and the wheat. So again, his disciples come and ask him to explain the parable. So Jesus says, the field is the world, the good seed are the sons of the kingdom, but the tares are the sons of the wicked one. The enemy that sowed them is the devil, accuser or slanderer. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are the angels. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be at the end of this age. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who hath ears to hear, let him hear.
There's a lot said there, because obviously the people that the parable was intended for didn't necessarily always understand the intricacies of his message.
And I don't think necessarily that people today understand it. If it wasn't for the teachings of the masters that we've studied and many people have studied, we may not have gotten the full import of this statement. So we have, of course, the offspring of the wicked one, the sons of the kingdom, and we find out now that the so-called wicked one has sons also called tares, which usually grow along with the wheat. And then it says the tares are burned in the fire. So is this a reference to the eternal fires of hell?
It may be, and I think a lot of people have possibly misunderstood that definition and think that the wicked one and his sons and the eternal fire is some place where someone who makes a mistake, someone who, quote, sins, produces negative karma for themselves, is wicked. That's a pretty strong word. I never really went along with that.
I know. It's a very, very strong word, and it has to be strong. But
because sometimes he would talk about people that sin, just sinners, and then you're wicked. And I think that's a very different title to give someone that they're the seed of the wicked one.
These terms, as we know, do not relate to the children of God. They don't relate to the sons and daughters of God. They don't relate to people who have come from a divine source that have made mistakes, that have gone astray, maybe through temptation, but they are not termed godless and wicked. So those who have no light that we've been describing, the Luciferians, the Satans, the fallen angels, and so forth, and their creation, as we talked about, are called these names in both the Old Testament and the New Testament. It does not relate to the children of God.
Right.
So getting back to the so-called burned in the fire, this burning in the fire is actually a reference to transmutation.
Okay.
The fire of transmutation, right? Again, we have to go back to Revelation where it talks about the lake of fire.
I see. So there's a correlation between the lake of fire being burned in the fire. And I remember, when I was young and being raised in a Christian Catholic tradition, I was told that if you were bad for too long, remember, you only have one lifetime.
Right.
Unfortunately. So let's say I did 20 or 30 things that were not
bad.
considered terrible.
What if you didn't go to church?
well, that was a sin. I had to at least just confess that. I wasn't going to, burn for
But
eternity.
if you didn't confess it, then you
and if I held on to it and
Yeah,
did
if you
20,
held it-
well, now I'm in trouble. And, I never did understand, and other people have talked about this, like, how could you possibly have a God or Jesus as an emissary of that God to tell people that for eternity, you're going to burn in the fires of hell? Well, I would sometimes think, well, people can get used to anything. After a while, that'd get old too. It's like,
Well, no.
here I am again. Hundreds of thousands of years go by, and
yeah.
I'm still burning in the fires of hell?
Yeah, right. I mean,
So
you
what's
keep
the real
repeating-
interpretation
Well, the
then?
real interpretation, as we've been given again by the ascended masters, is this is the lake of fire, and this lake of fire is actually located on what is called a star, the great god star Sirius, not on the physical plane, and it's tremendous fire of purification and transmutation. So all of these beings that don't have any light left are cast into this magnificent lake of fire, and the dark energy is transmuted, and basically what happens, it's repolarized. The energy is repolarized. It goes back to the great central sun. It's not a question of someone burning in hell, which is supposed to be all the way down, and there is the astral plane, there is a hell, but you don't stay there.
Right. And that was the
People can
point.
stay
Yeah.
for they can stay for a very long time.
Hundreds of
because
years
some
can
of
go
them,
by.
Some of them like to stay there on the other levels.
But they like to stay there, but they're not in a situation where they're burning in fires
They're-
and being
they're not-
tortured continuously.
they're
There's
not- no.
levels then. There's
There are levels.
gradations. I think the Ascended
Yeah.
Masters have taught us that
Uh-huh.
there are actually around 33 levels
Yes.
of the astral plane in a descending order.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if you wind up on the astral plane somewhere in level 2, 3, or 4, it's not a good thing.
No.
But you're certainly not burning in a fire, being tortured
No.
by other
For all
evil
eternity.
angels,
Yeah.
and that kind of a thing,
Yeah.
which is depicted in many movies.
Yes, it is.
It's constantly drummed in that you got to be careful, do good, or else, and you're shown this horrific situation where no one wants to go there. But I'm going to get back to the lake of fire.
So where did the teaching come from?
About the lake of fire?
No, about the eternal burning in the eternal hell. Where do you think it came from?
Well, I would think that any self-respecting fallen one would want to induce fear,
Right.
right?
Yes.
And make you, be in a sense that if I don't follow these particular orders or this dogma, as it's known as,
Yeah.
then I may wind up there. I don't want to wind up there. And then if I were them, I would be the one making up the dogma for you to
Exactly.
follow.
And that's exactly
If you don't
true.
follow it, then you wind up in a situation like hell.
Exactly. Some of the greatest church fathers came up with this dogma, and I'm not going to go into that any further, but we might want to question who they are. So we have, the wicked one.
Right.
The wicked one. So who is the wicked one? Well, I think we said before that the wicked one was a name of Satan, the Lucifer,
Right.
the lieutenant of Lucifer.
Mhm.
And then they had, of course, cloned themselves, created their own races. And this is, according to the masters, what Jesus is referring to.
So these are the tares
Yes.
among the wheat.
Yes.
Or
They're
the-
both together on the planet, and sometimes you cannot tell one from another.
Right.
But it also has to do, and I think we might want to bring this up, with the fact that during the course of our being on earth with the fallen angels and with the Nephilim, sometimes we have implanted in us their ways and their thoughts and their feelings, and then you have almost tares and wheat in your own consciousness.
Right.
That's another
Right.
story. But just to let you know that it's for two interpretations of that particular.
Right. And I also think that they like to drum up the idea of you sympathizing with them. So really, you're coming down to two situations: a soul that has a divine spark,
Yeah.
and someone who has no soul,
Yes.
no divine spark. And you really can't profile that at all.
It's very
There's no
difficult.
way that
Yeah.
you can go around. But I think Jesus mentions certain ways that
Yeah.
you can maybe identify him.
Oh,
about
yes.
about the The
Yeah.
fruits he talks about by their fruits you shall know
Yeah.
them.
By their fruits you shall know them.
And the fruits would be the outworking of events, I would think.
It's the outworking of events, but even more subtly, it's really regarding the vibration and the motive. But that's not easy to discern. You have to actually have a certain level of the Holy Spirit or have a lot of gnosis, which is knowledge, divine knowledge, that, of course, the masters have given to understand. But also, what are they doing? You know,
Right.
usually it's let us do evil that good may come, although they wouldn't say evil.
Right. It's a very, very subtle situation, and that's why they've been able to do what they've been doing for these thousands and thousands of years. But some of them are very obvious.
Yes.
Like I think most people would agree that if you look at Hitler
Yeah.
and what he has done, in hindsight, but when it was happening, and the people who were in Germany,
Yes.
it was a different thing.
It was a
Your
different-
viewpoint could be different. It wasn't until more information got out over time.
Yes, that's true.
And now
Yeah.
today we look at I don't think anyone would really want to say that, Hitler was an okay guy. He
Right.
just had a political view that was
Yeah.
different from ours.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, he got a little off, but
Yeah.
he's just a political point of view that he's very strong on.
I'll say.
So-
Well, it gets back to what you were saying in one of the previous episodes about you defined a black magician.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I
And
see.
this
Yeah.
particular individual, known as Adolf Hitler, was in fact exactly that, a fallen angel, of course. That's pretty obvious after what we've been through, and our understanding, but also a black magician, which has even more powers.
Right. And so you can understand how masses of people could be mesmerized
Yes.
by even when he spoke. When you see clips of him speaking to the masses,
Yes.
there is definitely an energy and a vibration that goes out that is mesmerizing. He uses his voice, which is not necessarily the right use of using the spoken word, but he uses that voice in such a way that people, you start falling into, you get pulled in
Yeah.
to his charisma.
Yeah.
Now, fallen angels have charisma, tremendous charisma.
That's a very interesting point. They have a tremendous amount of charisma, and you see this even in the performing arts. And there are a great many wonderful souls of light and children of God in the performing arts. But again, on earth, you have a mixture in every single discipline. You have a mixture of fallen angels, the robot races that we discussed, in education, in the economy, in the performing arts, in every way of life. They're all sprinkled together, and it's up to the people of Earth, this planet, to discern who do we follow. Just because they say something over and over again,
Right.
and they have control, let's say, of certain manifestations of the media, doesn't necessarily mean that what is said is correct. But
Right.
that's the tactic they've been using
Right.
for a long time. But I know, physical profiling would be of no help. You
Right.
don't directly, in anger, confront and accuse the fallen ones. That's
Right.
not the way to deal with them,
Right. And the fact that they have,
because you may be wrong.
yeah, right.
The person you're confronting may not be a fallen one or the robot creation.
Right. And that's a really important point. I just want to reiterate that a
Yeah.
little bit more
But
because it's
elaborate on that. If you
Well,
want.
sure. It's discernment, not judgment.
Yes.
You don't go around judging people and saying that one's fallen.
Yes.
It's a discernment. It takes time. You
Yeah.
tune in with the heart and you listen. It takes a long time. And the other thing is that they have embedded themselves into every facet of society.
Yes,
They are
that's what I
neither
was-
right wing, left wing, in the middle. They're
Yeah.
not either religious, Eastern religion. They're philosophers. They're not philosophers. They're scientists, not scientists. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So
Yeah.
the only way to discern is whether you feel that spark of the divine spark in that person or not. And even if you don't, it may be your fault that you don't have the attunement where you are able to tune in to that person's
Exactly.
divinity.
And if somebody is confused, and this always happens, you can always ask. You can always invoke the higher self.
Right.
You can invoke a master. what is acting here in society? What is really acting? What is really the truth?
Right.
There are certain principles, and of course, Saint Germain is the great founder of the great, principles of freedom,
Right.
as he was the one that overshadowed the founding fathers in America. So sometimes you look at the principles for which someone, stands, and you can kind of see, sometimes they are in alignment with the Ascended Masters, the Great Right Brotherhood.
Mm-hmm.
But someone can say that they are and not be.
Right.
So it's tricky.
So it's
I
difficult.
think we got the point.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm glad you explained that.
Yeah. I think we have another quote here, again, delineating the two types of people that we
Yes.
have on the planet.
Yes.
And I think this is Jesus and the Pharisees.
Yes. The Pharisees are confronting Jesus in John 8, verses 43 to 44 and verses 46 to 47. I'm using the Jerusalem Bible translation as opposed to the King James or another Bible.
I've always
So-
liked the Jerusalem Bible.
You like the Jerusalem
Yeah, it's
Bible?
easier to understand with the terminology.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some passages are really like especially to
Right.
read the historical books. There.
And it's great for studying. When you
Yes,
want
it
to
is.
study the Bible,
Yeah.
the footnotes in the Jerusalem Bible is excellent.
Yeah.
It has a lot of historical information of what was going on at
Yes.
the time.
Yes. Yes.
So I don't want to get off on
That's a
that tangent,
tremendous-
but
no,
go ahead
but-
and read the.
I'll read
Go
it.
ahead and read it.
I'll go ahead and read it. So the Pharisees are confronting Jesus, and what do they want to do? They want to murder him. Like, who wants to murder the avatar? You see what I'm saying? If people don't realize, yeah,
Yeah.
what
He's a
kind
nice
of,
guy. He's going
what-
around doing good
certainly.
things. What do you want?
What
Want to
kind
kill
of a
him?
person wants to murder the avatar
Right.
of the age? See
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Pharisees, so Jesus says, and the Pharisees are not getting it at all, and they're, furious and angry. So Jesus says, do you know why you cannot take in what I say? It is because you are unable to understand my words. The devil, and again, the accuser. The devil is the accuser. And I just want to mention in the middle of this that the accuser of the brethren is one of the titles of Peshualga
Oh, right.
that we talked
right.
about.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of his
Constantly
titles.
accusing and putting down
He's
those who have
right.
light.
He even put down Lucifer at one
Right.
point. So he puts down those who have light. So Jesus is using the word devil, and again, diabolos in Greek, the accuser. So he says the devil is your father.
Well, that's huge
Can
right
you
there.
imagine saying
if,
that?
if the devil is my father and I'm his
Then-
offspring, then I have to be tied to either Lucifer, Satan, or one of the created races, the
But you
clones, the
see-
carbon copies.
But you see, no one interprets that way.
Well, it says it right there.
I know it says
it says it's your father.
Okay. The devil is your father, and you prefer to do the lusts of your father. He was a murderer from the start. There is no truth in him at all. He is a liar and the father of lies. If I speak the truth, why do you not believe me? A child of God listens to the words of God. If you refuse to listen, it is because you are not God's children.
So that's very, very powerful. And I don't remember, reading that and going over that when I was raised in the Catholic tradition.
No.
Now, these kinds of statements, you had memorized statements that I remember doing.
Yes.
But something like this and taking this apart was never done,
No.
And
that goes for many, many parts of the New Testament, because you see, the fallen ones want this hidden. They don't, it's in the Bible.
they didn't
I read
hide that
it.
one so well.
They didn't hide it.
That's right out there.
But you see, it's covered over. Oh, they're just misguided people.
Right.
The Pharisees are simply misguided.
Or the wicked ones and the people that Jesus is talking about. Is you the light bearer
Yeah.
who is sinning for so long?
Yeah.
You're a miserable sinner from the beginning.
Yeah.
And so you're part of this, but I don't get that when I read that at all.
No.
So
No, I don't get that either, because he's named names. He has the murderer. Now, Satan was known as the murderer because the Satans use murder to solve all the problems. okay, they figured that if they killed off Jesus, they did away with him. They think that if they kill the body, if they assassinate secretly or otherwise, they've actually killed you. But they didn't kill the soul. Of course, 3 days later, Jesus was up and moving.
Right. But what they're concerned about is just getting the person out of embodiment.
Out of their way. So Jesus is saying, your father, and he's dealing with Lucifer and Satan and Peshualga, but he's in a generic sense. He is a liar. Well, the liar was Lucifer, and the murderer was Satan. So the Luciferians and the Satans are the liars and the murderers. So Jesus is confronting them, and then after this passage, it says, and they took up stones to cast at him.
Well, because he's setting the record
Right.
straight.
He's there for
confronting
the
them.
judgment, because he said, for judgment I am come. In other words, because these Satans, Luciferians, killed Jesus, they, by that act, are judged. It doesn't mean they're going to disappear. It means that they are judged for this act, and when their cycle is over, again, we're dealing with the lake of fire.
Right.
We're dealing with the final judgment. So
Right.
Jesus actually, in this passage, set the record straight about the two types of people, but the teaching didn't take, like we were discussing.
Right. How long does it take to take?
I know.
It's constantly,
Well, it's 2,000
you know,
years.
and it's not only in Western teachings. These
No.
things come up in other teachings also.
Yeah. You know,
Right, in the
now,
Eastern?
Jesus studied in the East, and we didn't get into this, but of course, a lot of people realize that he did go to the East. He did study Buddhism. He studied Hinduism in the first century. Jesus knew about the two types of people because he also probably studied the Bhagavad Gita, because he was very, very learned, right?
And this is during the missing years that we're
Yes,
talking about.
we're
You're
talking,
referring
we're
to.
talking about the years between, let's say, 12 or 13, about 13, and like maybe 29 years of age.
Right.
Or a few years, 29 years of age. He was gone in the East. He was studying, again, he had to study
Yes.
different languages.
Yeah.
So he did study the scriptures of the East. So in the Bhagavad Gita, incidentally, and this is very interesting since we're going to be dealing with some Eastern teachings,
Right.
Krishna says to Arjuna, quote, there are two types of people born into this world, the Deva and Asura, A-S-U-R-A. This is from the Gita, chapter 16, verse 6. So the Deva literally means God or the good people. In other words, people who come from a spiritual source.
You can't get away from this dichotomy of two
No.
kinds. I mean, he says it right there. There are two
Yeah.
types of people.
Yeah,
And
Krishna.
I know I don't know if I said this before, but this is a thread that runs through all of the major religions of the world.
Yeah,
That there is some kind of a mishap, a situation where heaven is turned upside down. The Eastern use different terminology. The West use a different terminology from them. But it all comes down like what you just said. It's very similar to what you just quoted, from the Bible,
Right,
what Jesus
yeah.
said. Very similar. And you can't get away from this. And that reminds me, that goes back to the time of, if you go back 5,000 BC,
yeah,
you're now at the time of the great avatar, Rama,
yes.
right? Or Ram.
Yeah.
I think
Rama
depending
or
on
Rama. Yeah,
the dialect you use,
Yep,
Hindi is Ram or
Yep.
Rama, and the other one is, so
Yep.
was it Sanskrit is Rama?
yeah. Sanskrit is Rama and Hindi is Ram.
Right, and it's another incarnation. It's the seventh incarnation of Vishnu,
Yes,
right?
the seventh
Now,
incarnation.
yeah, now this is huge, and it's the story of the Ramayana, or Ramyana, Ram's journey, basically.
Yes.
And I talked to a lot of people from India when I was working,
Mm-hmm.
and the story of Ramyana is told by your grandparents to you when you're like 5, 6, 7, and you hear the story over and over again throughout all of India. It's one of their greatest epics ever. And I remember them telling me that for them, for the child in India, it's a cross between Christmas and the 4th of July, because that's the festival of
Oh, I
lights,
see.
and you
Yes.
have all kinds of Lights
Yeah.
are put up, and you
Yeah.
have fireworks at the end of the day.
Yeah.
All because of this journey of Ram. And this journey is an amazing journey, and what he has to do and what he has to confront.
Wow.
So
It's an amazing
again,
situation.
right. And again, here it is again in the Eastern religion, all the way back 5000 BC, where Ram is like a avatar warrior, and he has to confront the evil one, Ravana.
Ravana, yeah.
Right, Ravana.
Yeah, Ravana.
And maybe-
Sometimes in Hindi they say Ravan.
Yeah, it's always a different. There's like over 120
Well, who is this
languages
Ravan?
in. Well, that's what we're gonna get into. Ravana or Ravan. Who is he? Why is an avatar such as Ram sent to confront this individual? And maybe we should pick this up in the next episode and help show that this thread of evil, physically embodied in the earth,
Yes.
doesn't go away, and it's everywhere in all religions. So let's take that up next episode.
I think that's
the
a good
story
idea.
of Ramayana
You'll like
and
this.
the confrontation with Ravana.
It's an amazing story. Yeah.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching.